Hi my dear students, I'm Dr. Jeetu. Today we'll be discussing about plaque control. For most part I have referred Karansa 13th edition. I have also referred 6th edition Lindy. So going into presentation. Plaque control can be broadly classified into mechanical plaque control and chemical plaque control. Mechanical is without the use of any chemicals. We use aids like toothbrush, dental floss, toothpicks, all the mechanical methods of cleaning. Chemical agents include the use of a particular chemical agent. First, let's discuss about the chemical plaque control. When we learn about the chemical plaque control, there are four important terminologies. There are minute differences between all the four terms which we have to be careful about. First is antimicrobial agent. Okay. So it works against the microbes. These are chemicals that have a bacteriostatic or bactericidal effect in vitro, but this alone cannot be extrapolated to a in vivo efficacy against plaque. So antimicrobial means it kills the microbes, or it can have a bacteriostatic as well as bactericidal action when we test in a lab. But clinically these are not effective against plaque. So antimicrobial just means it works against the microbe in vitro. Okay. Next is plaque reducing or plaque inhibitory agents. These are the chemicals that reduces the quantity or affects the quality of the plaque, but this may not be sufficient to influence gingivitis or caries. So very specific term, plaque reducing or plaque inhibitory. So it reduces plaque or it inhibits plaque, but we are not sure whether it can affect the gingivitis or caries part. Third is anti-plaque agents. Anti-plaque agents are against plaque in such a way that this will benefit us in fighting against gingivitis or caries. So anti-plaque are against plaque, and this is going to give us a clinical benefit also. And finally it is anti-gingivitis agents. These chemical agents are acting against gingivitis, so they reduce gingival inflammation, but it is necessarily not influencing the bacterial plaque. It is reducing gingivitis in a mechanism other than inhibiting plaque. Once again, antimicrobials are against microbes, but in vivo it is not effective against plaque. Plaque reducing or plaque inhibitory reduces or inhibits plaque, but we are not going to get any benefit against gingivitis or caries. Anti-plaque are against plaque in such a way that we are getting a clinical benefit against gingivitis or caries, and anti-gingivitis reduce gingivitis, but not essentially by inhibiting plaque. So which is the class that we are interested in? It is anti-plaque, which means they act against plaque and they benefit us against gingivitis and caries. So there are four generations for this anti-plaque agents. First, second, third and fourth generations. First generation reduces plaque score by 20 to 50%. There is a reduction in plaque score by 20 to 50%. This value is important, and they do not exhibit any significant substantivity. Only for minutes these agents can be retained in our mouth, no significant substantivity. Examples are certain antibiotics, quaternary ammonium compounds like CPC or cetylpyridinium chloride, essential oils, phenolic compounds, povidone iodine. All these are first generation agents. Second generation agents are far more effective. They inhibit plaque score by 70 to 90%, and there is a retention of 25 to 30% after each 1 minute of mouth rinse. So there is a significant substantivity, or they remain active for hours. The best example is bisbiguanide group or R-chlorhexidine, which is considered as the gold standard. Amine fluorides and stannous fluoride mouth rinses are also second generation agents. Third generation agents have mild antibacterial effect, and for major part they interfere with the bacterial adhesion. They inhibit the adhesion of the bacteria to the tooth surface. Example is amino alcohol group like octapinol, decapinol, delmopinol. And we have fourth generation agents which are still under research. Fourth generation agents aim to establish a personalized flora for each individual. By using that mouth rinse, it is going to eliminate the harmful bacteria, and a beneficial and balanced flora is going to be established for the individual. Coming to chlorhexidine, after so many years of introduction of chlorhexidine, still now this agent is the gold standard for chemical plaque control agent. Chlorhexidine, some properties are it's a very strong base and it is most stable in its salt form. Okay, and it is dicationic at pH above 3.5. It has two cationic groups or two positive charges. And chlorhexidine is available in three forms for us. It is available in digluconate, acetate and hydrochloride forms. The most common ones that we use is digluconate form. HCl form is sparingly soluble in water compared to digluconate and acetate. Next is how chlorhexidine is going to act against bacteria. It is bacteriostatic at low concentration and bactericidal at high concentration. Bacteriostatic means it affects only the metabolism and division of the bacteria. It is not killing the bacteria. This action exists for more than 12 hours. What is chlorhexidine doing to the bacteria? It alters the integrity of the bacterial cell membrane and it attaches towards the inner cell membrane of the bacteria. This increases the permeability and the leakage of the cellular components occurs. This is how it exerts bacteriostatic effect on the bacteria. At high concentration, chlorhexidine is bactericidal, which means it kills the bacteria. So here there is coagulation and precipitation of the cytoplasm occurring inside the bacteria, and this kills the bacteria. And there is one more important term which is called the pincushion effect. What is pincushion effect? We already discussed that chlorhexidine has a dicationic nature. There are two cationic ions. There are two cations. So one charged end of the chlorhexidine will bind to the tooth and other end binds to the bacteria. So what is the result? Chlorhexidine acts as an intermediate and it will not allow the bacteria directly to attach onto the tooth surface. This is called pincushion effect. So even though chlorhexidine is so good, it has so many good qualities, there are a number of drawbacks that chlorhexidine has. The first one is brownish discoloration. If we prescribe chlorhexidine to a patient, we tell them specifically not to use this continuously. Okay, use for 2 weeks and then stop for a while. Yes, so this brownish discoloration can be due to two reasons. One is Maillard reaction. Maillard reaction is defined as a non-enzymatic browning reaction because no enzymes are involved in this reaction. This is considered a non-enzymatic browning reaction or Maillard reaction. Second reason is formation of pigmented metal sulfides. How is this happening? Chlorhexidine denatures the protein, and we know there are disulfide bonds in protein. So when the sulfur group is released, it will form pigmented metal sulfides, and this can lead to brownish discoloration. After brown discoloration, there can be calcifications. And third one is oral mucosal erosions can be there. Unilateral parotid swelling can occur. There is enhanced supragingival calculus formation. There can be calcifications, we already said. Similarly, there can be enhanced calculus formation. And finally, there is a bitter taste in the oral cavity. So here you can expect all except questions. Okay. All these are the drawbacks of chlorhexidine. Now let's see some chlorhexidine products. One is Corsodil. Corsodil is 0.2% chlorhexidine, 10 ml volume per rinse, which delivers 20 mg of chlorhexidine. Peridex is 0.12% chlorhexidine, 15 ml volume per rinse, and it delivers 18 mg of chlorhexidine. So both these concentrations are found to be effective. Usually 0.2% is used in India and 0.12% is used in the US. Then we have PerioChip. What is PerioChip? It is a LDD device or local drug delivery device. It is composed of 2.5 mg chlorhexidine gluconate. We already mentioned chlorhexidine has 3 forms. Among that, chlorhexidine digluconate is the common form. So PerioChip has chlorhexidine digluconate. It is a small orange-brown tombstone-shaped chip which is to be inserted into the periodontal pocket. It was approved by FDA in 1998. And there are some values associated with PerioChip which you have to remember. PerioChip weighs approximately 7.4 mg and it contains, we already said, 2.5 mg of chlorhexidine gluconate. You can see the figure which shows the orange tombstone shaped PerioChip. Okay. This PerioChip, after it is inserted into the pocket, it releases chlorhexidine in a biphasic manner. Approximately 40% is released within the first 24 hours, means within 1 day 40% of the drug is released. This is called the initial burst effect. Okay, and this is diffusion dependent. The remaining 60% is released in a linear fashion in about 7 to 10 days, and this is due to enzymatic degradation. So the initial burst was due to diffusion, and later it is released within a period of 7 to 10 weeks due to enzymatic degradation. So these are the questions that have been repeatedly asked about chemical plaque control. Now we'll see about mechanical plaque control. Which is the main tool for mechanical plaque control? It is toothbrush. Toothbrush, specifically manual toothbrush, has an ADA specification number of 119. This has been asked. 119 is the ADA specification number, and according to the ADA specification number 119, there are a few criteria that has to be met. One is the toothbrush should be 1 to 1.25 inches long. And second point is it should be 5 by 16 to 3 by 8 millimeters wide. Sorry, not millimeters, inches. It should have 2 to 4 rows of bristles, and in each row there should be 5 to 12 tufts. And inside each tuft you can see 80 to 85 bristles. So 1 to 1.25 inches long, 5 by 16 to 3 by 8 inches wide, 2 to 4 rows of bristles will be present, and in each row there is 5 to 12 tufts which contains 80 to 85 bristles per tuft. And you can see the structure of a toothbrush. It has a head, it has a neck portion, and it has a body portion where we grasp it. And the head again has two parts, toe and the heel. Clear with that? Coming to few points on the bristle hardness. Bristle hardness, it is proportional to the square of the diameter of the bristle. So when the diameter increases, the hardness of the bristle is going to increase. How much? It is, which in a value proportional to the square of the diameter, and it is inversely proportional to the square of the bristle length. When the bristle length increases, we know it becomes more flexible and it becomes less hard. So it is inversely related to the square of the length of the bristle. Now, depending upon the bristle hardness, the toothbrushes can be classified into 4: super soft, soft, medium and hard. In millimeters, the values are: super soft has a bristle diameter of 0.1 millimeters, soft 0.2, medium 0.3 and hard 0.4 millimeters. So super soft, soft, medium and hard 0.1, 2, 3 and 4 millimeters. Often we use toothbrushes along with the dentifrices or toothpastes. This question has been asked repeatedly: which constituent has which function? So there are abrasives in a dentifrice, which is predominantly silica, alumina, calcium carbonate. Okay, so silica, alumina and calcium carbonates are the abrasive agents in a dentifrice. Then we have humectants, which will help keep the toothpaste in that moist form. It can be sorbitol, glycerol, mannitol, any of these salts or alcohols. Thickening agent is carboxymethyl cellulose. It is not in a fluid state, it is kept in a thickened state with the help of carboxymethyl cellulose. There is soap and detergent which produces the lather when we brush, and it is sodium lauryl sulfate. We know it is commonly, we heard this name in shampoos. Shampoos has sodium lauryl sulfate. The same sodium lauryl sulfate is the detergent in dentifrice. Then there can be different therapeutic agents in dentifrice depending upon the use. Their fluoride toothpaste may contain fluorides. There can be pyrophosphates which help in decreasing calculus formation. There can be potassium nitrate which decreases sensitivity. So these are the therapeutic agents. Then there are binding agents which bind together all the other constituents, and usually it is alginate or carrageenate. These are the binding agents. Then flavoring agent, usually it is peppermint oil. And we have a preservative in dentifrice which is benzoic acid. Now we'll look into the pattern of movement of bristles. There are different patterns of movement, and based on this there are different brushing techniques. First is a roll movement of the bristles. The modified Stillman technique uses this pattern or roll pattern of movement. Vibratory pattern of movement is used by Bass technique, Stillman's technique and Charter's technique. Circular pattern is followed by Fone's technique. Vertical movement in Leonard's and horizontal movement in Scrub technique. Some commonly asked MCQs are: which is the most common brushing technique? It is the Scrub technique or horizontal pattern of movement. Roll technique is the least efficient type of pattern of movement. That means the modified Stillman technique. Fone's technique, which follows a circular pattern of movement, is recommended in children because it is the most easy one for children. As we already said, scrub is the most common and most easy technique. It is recommended in children of 6 to 8 years of age. But mostly when we ask the patient about how they brush, they show us the scrub technique. By 6 to 8 years of age, children should quit this technique and they should start using vibratory technique. Bass technique is a good technique because it introduces the brush bristles into the gingival sulcus. And modified Bass technique, brush is positioned similar to the Bass technique only. Then What is the difference? After applying a movement in the anteroposterior direction, the head of the brush is rotated and a occlusal movement is given. That is the difference in modified Bass technique. It is given in the figure how the bristles are kept in Bass and modified Bass technique. In Fons technique, the bristles are placed at 90 degree and the entire brush head is moved in circular scrubbing motion and reduces light pressure. It is used in young children with minimal manual dexterity. If you remember, Fons technique is the technique which we train the kids by drawing big circles in the air by stretching their hands outwards. Then they are trained to take their hand towards them by drawing smaller circles, and this is introduced into their oral cavity. That is how we train children to use Fons technique. Next is modified Stillman technique. It is the technique which is to be used in case of gingival recession. It is a roll technique and the head of the brush rotates progressively in occlusal direction. So it is carefully placed at the gingival margin and bristles are moved occlusally so that it will not damage the gingiva anymore. So it is a technique of choice in gingival recession. Now Charter's technique, the bristles are directed towards the occlusal surface. How the bristles are placed is only in the opposite direction as we see in the figure. It is directed towards the occlusal, then the brush is moved back and forth with a rotatory movement. Then we have psychological or Smith technique. This method should use a soft toothbrush and brushing is done by sweeping from the coronal portion and then apically towards the gingival margin and attached gingiva. Why this is called the physiological technique? Because this resembles the movement of pathway of food during mastication. When we eat, how the food moves. That is the movement that we are trying to replicate. While using toothbrush and dentifrice, often we tend to miss out the interproximal surface, right? So we have to use interdental aids to help clean the interproximal surfaces. There are three types of embrasures. In type 1 embrasure, the papillary tip fills the embrasure space and up to the contact point between the two teeth, the papillary fill is present. In type 2, the papilla has receded a bit from the contact point of the teeth, but it is coronal to the CEJ of both the teeth. In type 3, papilla has receded so much that the position of the gingiva or the position of the papilla is apical to the CEJ of the teeth. In type 1 embrasure, we have to use dental floss. In type 2, we can use interdental brush, and in type 3 embrasures, we should use uni-tufted brush. First is dental floss, which is to be used in type 1 embrasure. Levi Spear Palmley is considered as the father of oral hygiene, and he is the one who found the dental floss. And who is the father of dental hygiene? If the question is father of dental hygiene, the answer is Alfred Fons, and he is more associated with the dental hygienist. So, dental hygiene. Father of oral hygiene is Levi Spear Palmley, who discovered dental floss. As we already discussed, type 1 embrasure, we have to use floss. In type 2, interdental or proxa brush, and in type 3, we have to use uni-tufted brush. Dental floss can be of two types, waxed and unwaxed. In waxed dental floss, what is the coating? This question has been asked. The coating is spermaceti, which is derived from whale sperm. So this is waxed dental floss. We also have unwaxed dental floss. Then there are two techniques to do flossing, the spool technique and the loop technique. One more question which has been asked is, what is the length of the floss that you take to use in the spool technique? It is 18 centimeters. So spool technique and loop technique. Type 2 embrasure should be cleaned with an interdental brush, which is a small conical brush, and it is to be used in large open embrasure spaces. Type 3 or uni-tufted brush is commonly used where? This question can be asked. It is used in the lingual surface of the mandibular molars and palatal and distal surface of the maxillary molars. These are inaccessible areas, lingual surface of mandibular molar and palatal and distal surface of maxillary molars. Now what is perioid? Perioid is a toothpick with a handle and it can be easily used in furcation areas. Another thing is stimudent. Stimudent is a triangular toothpick only again, but it is used to stimulate the papillary gingiva. We should get from the term stimudent for stimulation of the papillary gingiva rather than for cleaning the interproximal surface. Then we have rubber tip. What is rubber tip used for? It is for gingival massage and to improve epithelial keratinization. Another term which may be new is toothed. What is toothed? Toothed is a swab of a sponge which is attached to a stick. Why do we want a sponge attached to a stick? Because in hospitalized patients who has extremely fragile and tender mucosal lesions, a brush will be too harsh for them. So for cleaning their oral cavity, we have to use a toothed, which is a swab of sponge attached to a stick. Coming to polishing. Polishing is done to remove soft deposits and extrinsic stains. It is not for plaque. The common agents used for polishing are silica or SiO2, which is usually used for natural teeth. Pumice is usually used to polish dentures and also for natural teeth. Then tin oxide or SNO is used for polishing metallic restorations. So silica and pumice both can be used for natural teeth. For dentures, we are familiar, we polish dentures using pumice in our clinics, and tin oxide is used for polishing metallic restorations. 3 minutes of polishing with pumice can result in a loss of 4 microns of enamel. 3 minutes polishing, 4 micron enamel loss. Just keep in mind this numerical, it can be asked. So after using all these mechanical and chemical plaque control agents, we have to know whether our plaque control is proper or not. For this purpose, we have disclosing solutions. Disclosing solution can be a very good aid in patient education and motivation. And what the disclosing solution is staining? It stains the glycoprotein component of the plaque. Common disclosing solutions are basic fusion, erythrocin, and fast green. And commonly asked questions, erythrocin is the most common disclosing agent, and Bismarck brown. What is this disclosing agent? It is used to do the plaque component of the Ramford index. For disclosing the plaque in Ramford index, Bismarck brown was used. Coming to our last slide, this also may be a new term, plaque light mirror. Here, to disclose the plaque, we use a fluorescent dye in conjunction with the special mirror. Here, we avoid the use of red dye to stain the plaque. Here, we stain it brilliant yellow-green. It is used for adult males who object to get the red staining done. Red staining of the lips, tongue, and cheeks are considered to be shameful by young adults, it seems. So, they use plaque light mirror. So that's all. Most of the things you already know. Only you have to segregate the information into different compartments in your brain. And there may be 2-3 new terms like toothed, plaque light mirror. And these are also going to be easy if you write that down somewhere and you repeatedly see that. If you have any doubt, you contact me. Thank you.